Greetings and salutations, and welcome to episode 184. I need to change the title to the video, Stoner. And as it is 184, you did 183 last week when I was out. And so I had even missed the graphics because things were just not good in the Perry household. Let me tell you that. But things are all doing much, much better. Appreciate those of you who had checked in. But yes, last week, started with me, went to the foster child, the youngest, then it went to EP, then it went to my son. Thankfully, the foster boy never once, he avoided it. So good on him. But we're all better in the Para household and ready to talk some football because there's plenty of things going on. I'm talking here with Stoner. No Trev tonight. He was called into work, so we won't be having him. But he did want to share a couple things with everybody. One, he called the Dax Milne thing. He knew that Milne or Bird were going to get the axe with Pringle being signed. And that he did say to add Riley the kicker. We're going to be talking more in depth in those, but I did want to shout out Trev with his two takes that he got correct in our chat, personal chat that we have going on here. We are going to be talking about those things. We're going to be talking about training camp. We're going to be talking about the standouts, and we're going to be talking about those ones who are not standing out and why that is a big, big issue. So those will be all coming in the game. In the cool down, we're going to be talking ratings. NFL top 100 is done for the Washington Commanders. A lot of people are upset with Jonathan Allen's rating. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we're also going to talk about the Madden ratings like we did last year. Maybe not too much important for you, but these players eat this stuff up, and it also gives you a good idea of where Washington players are looked at versus their others. Surprise person in one of these top 10s, Stoner. Maybe not such a surprise for us, but I thought it was pretty big. Little teaser for you there for the cool down. And here in the warm-up, we're going to be talking about two individuals who decided to speak out against our Washington Commanders franchise in Fandom. Davante Adams opening up his mouth and saying that we have the worst fans. And then you have Antonio Gibson saying that the franchise is in turmoil. We'll be talking about that here in the beginning. Of course, we are a part of the Believe Network, and we are sponsored by Bet Online, and you can use the code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for a bonus if you use that code. So make sure you head on over. They have up-to-date stats, live betting for all the games going on. Maybe you're a big Olympic fan and you want to be watching. I was watching the women's soccer. You could have been live betting to make sure that you saw, Rodman make sure that she got it in there. So it was an absolute beauty of a goal, and you could have been right there making that cash with that code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Maybe sports betting isn't your thing. That's all right. You can head on over to the casino. They have a bunch of games that you could be playing as well, slots and all that good stuff. Of course, we wish that you bet responsibly and that you use that code. Bet online where the game starts. So, Stoner, let's start off with not the one pictured here, but Davante Adams getting on a podcast and just kind of talking about how miserable our fans are. Yeah. What do you make of Davante Adams with these kind of comments? This is a player. This is something we've done before, Stoner, right? When we have people on, and we're going to have guests on for the other teams throughout the season. We asked them, what is it? What is the impression of Washington? Now, that was especially true with the former guy. Less so last season as we're in a transition. This season, we seem to be on the up and up, but this is somebody's impression of Washington. We see all the stuff. We see how we're big yahoos and there's all this. There's always drama and all this other stuff. But it's interesting to see an outside perspective kind of just hammering us.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that? It's like a massive speedboat going by. Holy crap. And one of those muscle boats. Anyway, to be fair, I think what he's saying is basically acceptable. If we can be offended because he's talking about us as fans, but let's be honest, that's what most people around the league think of. However, I did go back and do a little bit of research on this. Davante Adams has played in Washington in his however many years he's been in the league, 10 years, twice. Once in 2016 and once in 2018. How does he really know sort of the fandom of an organization that he's played at their stadium twice? And the last time was 8 years, do the math, 6 years ago. I don't understand how he can sort of make that declaration. If there's a player for Washington who has barely played in Las Vegas or when they were playing in Oakland, can they make a fair assessment? And they haven't played there in 6 years. I don't think that they can really make a fair assessment. However, he's not saying anything that's not true. I'm sorry. Our fandom has been beaten down. Our stadium is terrible. He said that. And if you look at Washington, D.C., I mean, the city itself, as much as I love the city, it doesn't have the greatest reputation for crime, for the politics and the crime, white collar crime with politicians and all that. So I'm going to give him a pass on that, because if you really look at it objectively from the outside, he's probably not saying anything that's not true. I just don't like that he's saying it, being that he's been here twice in 10 years.
He doesn't exactly have quite the experience. I think that it hits hard, especially when Washington is trying to look into getting the draft, right? They want the draft to come to DC. They want things to come here. They're trying to change that perspective. I'm one of the fans. So like, he's bad mouthing me. He's bad mouthing you. And I don't like that either.
Yeah, fair.
Especially because while we do have our fair share of curmudgeons and bad fans, every fan base does. But we also see a lot of the diehard fans. And this is something I will give us credit for. I mean, anybody who's been a fan over the last 30 years hasn't known anything close to being a relevant team. Right. Maybe one-offs in the playoffs and, always have this burgundy and gold glasses and hope. But I mean, you're locked in, and it's frustrating to hear like that those fans are being besmirched by a player, especially as you mentioned, one that hasn't been here for 6 years or so. I mean, look at the fans we have here in the comment section already. I failed to mention that as we stream live every Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern here on YouTube and Facebook. Locked on Law, Nicole were in here earlier. We got the earliest, rather. They're still here. Yam in the house as well. Big E. We have Doug in the house here as well. Allison, Tommy, Brian. Great group here coming in. We appreciate everybody who's coming there. Adam as well. So many that I have trying to be scroll quickly through that, but we do appreciate everybody who joins the conversation live here on Wednesdays. And these are the people he's talking about. And I just, I don't agree with it being a part of this fandom. I've seen some nasty fans. I'm here in Oklahoma where I've seen Cowboy fans who are very downtrodden. I mean, there's lots of talk about how the Cowboy fans are they're fed up. It's not about, they'll turn around one game and they'll be, how about them Cowboys? But that's neither here nor there. We, I think, deserve better than him saying that we're not any good. The city, I can somewhat agree with it. Okay. I love DC. It's definitely my preferred metropolis, but there are parts I hate about it. I hate how the federal buildings just continue to grow and how the communities tend to get pushed out of natural looking communities and more kind of high dollar communities, right?
Sure.
So it's losing a little bit of its charm in a lot of ways. So, but he's not going around DC. He's not seeing that. He gets to see, what was then FedEx Field, which is a dump. I mean, there's nothing like that one. Right? I can't defend. Yeah, I just can't.
Well, you're always gonna have the loyal fans for any fan base, but it's true that our fan base has eroded over the past 20 years. We can't deny that. The losing has taken its toll on everyone. And of course, you're going to have loyals like us, loyals like all the people who are here watching us right now. There's no mistaking their sort of their love of the team and undying love for the team. That's always going to be there. But as a whole, as a general fan base, you have to admit that it has eroded. And you just look at the numbers in the stands, just look at the team, the record and what they've done. It's just almost a statement of fact that we have nowadays one of the worst fan bases, relatively speaking, to the rest of the NFL. We do. There are worse. There are some that are not. I mean, Carolina. I mean, if you remember that game last year, they had like maybe 1,000 people in their stands.
Yeah, they need to move to like a Major League Soccer stadium.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a few that are there, but what do they all have in common? Losing. And if you can get off of that losing schneid of 20 years of that, then it will turn around. And we won't be that city, that franchise, that organization that is considered one of the worst. And you won't have Davante Adams saying things. But that's tough also, because that has an effect on free agency. That has an effect on look, Davante Adams is going to tell his boys that you don't want to go to Washington, D.C. because of all these reasons, right?
The NFLPA ratings. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah. We saw the
bad,
NFLPA ratings. They were terrible. Terrible. So all that adds up. And unfortunately, that's just kind of something that we have to deal with it. You start winning again, like always. In 2012, and look, we have to go back to 2012 every time, because that's in the last 20 years, that's the only season.
Those are the heydays. That's the
that we can really hang on to, right? But in 2012, nobody was complaining about FedEx Field. Nobody was complaining about parking. Nobody was saying that we had a bad fan base. Nobody was saying anything like that. Why? Because you were winning and you had an exciting team and you had an exciting quarterback leading that team. Get back to that, and nobody's going to be calling you out on, you know, what was that show? The Hot Ones or whatever that's called.
I forget.
Yeah, the one where you eat the spicy chicken wings and all that, and talk about stuff. But anyway, like with everything, it always comes back to the same thing. It always comes back to winning.
Yeah, winning would certainly change. I agree with JG here. The Washington fan base is a slumbering beast that is starting to awaken. You saw that in 2012 with the excitement especially at the end. That stadium was hopping. You saw it at the beginning of the season last year with the change in ownership. The problem is they weren't winning games after those first two.
Right.
And things just looked awful. And so people weren't going, the change in ownership was only so much, right? Like it's not going to change how much realistically, how we fan. Changing the product on the field is what's going to matter. And I think if we see more from this team, then we can duplicate what happened in 2012, which Locked is right here. 2012 was a fluke. I mean, it was a one-off.
It was a one-off. I wouldn't call it a fluke.
How is that not a fluke as a one-off? It literally was. It was lightning in a bottle, Stoner. That's the definition of a fluke.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe it's semantics. I would call
if it were more serious of a trend to say that Washington was back, then even after losing RG3, you would have had at least an acceptable team. But that 2013 team was bad.
Yes.
So that's why I would say it's a fluke.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the season was a fluke. I think it was a one-off. I think it was not indicative of sort of a run, a good run of seasons. But I don't think the season itself was a fluke. You can't say what RG3 did was a fluke. What Alfred Morris did, what that defense was doing, I can't call that season itself a fluke. But in the in the grand
sure
scheme
was
of
an
things,
anomaly. I'll say
it
that.
was an anomaly. It was a one-off. But a fluke means that, you backed into it, or you didn't have actually good players, and somehow something happened.
It was an
I mean,
exciting
RG3
season.
earned that Rookie of the Year.
I was deployed. That was one heck of a season to be deployed
awesome.
for. That was that was good. Good time singing "Hail to the Redskins" on AFN radio. So that was pretty good. Yeah, Grimjaw, I'm back. Family is doing well. We appreciate it. Again, everybody checking in there, checking into his former team. This gets asked all the time of former players, right? Like what's the difference between, when you get to a new team? Well, Antonio Gibson was asked that question, and he talked about how Washington is a struggling franchise. And this is another one that people just kind of got up in arms about. And to me, I don't understand why, Stoner, when you look at where he came from, his time with Ron Rivera, the no winning seasons, like, it wasn't used properly. Like, I mean, he's not wrong. Insert the Captain America Winter Soldier meme of he's out of line, but he's not wrong. Okay. Like, I mean, why are people mad at Antonio Gibson for calling out the truth? Like, you already gave Davante Adams a pass. I'm assuming you're going to do the same thing for Gibson here.
It's hilarious how we are on totally different wavelengths on both of these, because I'm not giving Antonio Gibson a pass on this. It's just like you said, that it's different. That's all it is. It's different. It's not like he's going to an organization that has a better outlook than Washington. Sorry, they don't. They just don't.
They're pretty
and
bad.
Let's look at the last
Drake May's looking pretty bad right now.
Drake May is not going to be QB1 week 1. Sorry, he's not. It's going to take him a while to get in there. In the last 4 years, and we'll use the Ron Rivera era, and when they had Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, in the last 4 years, the Patriots won 29 games. Washington won 26 games. Now, I'm not saying either one is great, but they're on par. That's basically the same over the course of 4 years. New England stinks, and they have stunk for the last 4 years. And to go to an organization now and go over there and say they're so much greater and they do things so much better than Washington. Sorry, dude. Guess what? Number one, Washington beat New England last year for one of their only wins, right? And number two,
scoreboard.
Washington is going to have a better record than New England. New England's going to be bad this year. And I mean bad. They're going to be fighting for that number one pick at the end of the year. And I'm not saying Washington's going to be great. They're going to be better than New England. I'll bet my 401k on that. Mark this down so we can play it later.
Did we ever build your 401k up after that
it's
loss
back up,
a couple years ago?
It's back up. But so I have a problem with Gibson saying that. It's so easy to go to another team and say everything is so much better over here. It's only because it's different. And there are things that you may not have liked in Washington. And now that you're in New England, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I wish we did that in Washington. That doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It's just different.
Yeah.
And he seems to like that. So I do have a problem with him.
Isn't this just something athletes always say, right?
Always.
Isn't this what we at least former Washington athletes always say it, right? I don't know about anybody else, but anytime our athletes go somewhere else, they're just like, hey, the culture's totally different here. It's different. And maybe it's just the Washington culture we've had over the last, 3 decades just hasn't been worth a darn. But I mean, I am going to give Gibson a pass here because he was talking about what was, not what is going to be. And I think KJ here had a great comment earlier. People move past the old and step into the new. Can't hold tomorrow on what happened today, right? Like, I think it's perfect, right? Gibson's talking about his time with Ron Rivera, which we've heard it from players here. We've heard it from players this year who are still on the team, who are still rocking burgundy and gold. about the difference and how things have changed and how things have improved. Like, it was bad under Ron Rivera. He's allowed to call it bad.
Right. But that's also all he knows. So while we get offended by saying that he shouldn't be talking about this organization because everything's new here, everything's changed offensively, defensively, front office, all of that has changed. So he can't really say, well, that's all he knows. They asked him about what he knows, what happened in the past, and how it compares to what's going on there now in New England. So in that respect, I give him a pass. And in him saying it and him answering the question, I was okay with it. But I don't think that Antonio Gibson is going somewhere to a place where he's just all of a sudden, it's the Shangri-La and everything is rainbows and pastels and everything's great. It's just not that way. It's just different for him. And they're going to be a losing organization this year, and he's going to feel it. And we're going to be over here in Washington winning more games, and he's going to say, man, I wish I was back in Washington.
Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I will say that there is a lot more prestige in New England with the record number of rings that they have, and
absolutely, sure,
and the fact that they are given a pass. You mentioned the 29 games to 26 games that Washington has won over the last 4 years.
Yep.
But when you look then the 20 years before that, things were pretty good.
Oh yeah,
right?
That's great.
Yeah, and so I think that it's taking a while, and when you have the coach who they respect over there put in place, that I think that they still have a lot of that, the New England way type deal. We haven't quite moved past that New England is no longer the New England that was winning championships every 2-3 years.
Yeah. But I wonder if he was here and he was in the building with Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury and I don't know who the running backs coach is off the top of my head. I wonder if he'd be saying if he would be so upset about it at this point. I think he would probably be super happy with the new energy, just like a lot of those holdovers are saying. The energy, they feel it. It's different energy this year. And while it won't necessarily translate into wins this year, but I think they are in a better path than New England is. 4-13, 4-13, both teams last year. Right. So
thankfully, we were the worst of the two to get the better quarterback.
That's
right.
We
do have a bright future where people are talking about all the excitement that is happening and just how good this team is looking in training camp right now. We're going to be talking about that here in the game. Welcome to the game here on episode 184. It's training camp. There's no practice today, but there's no shortage of stories coming out over the last week for training camp when the vets showed up and things have been getting serious. We had pads on starting Monday. We did a video based on that. We're going to rehash some of the things talked about there. So you can join the conversation here with us. We appreciate everybody who's jumping on with us live here this Wednesday night. But Stoner, first thing out the gate here is the vibes are great coming out of the camp. It's been some time. I feel like now that I say it though, Stoner, I feel like this is a little bit of a broken record. Last year we said the vibes are really good because the whole selling of the team. When we were in Richmond, the vibes were really, really good. You remember when she came out, Mrs. Snyder came out, and people were all like, "Oh, this is great!" Dan would never, and this is really personal and everything. And things were, we're feeling good. But I have to say, this still feels different.
Right, and we could say that till we're blue in the face, but. Again, we'll have to see where this ends up in terms of wins and losses over the course of the year. But it is different. And yes, we said that last year. And yes, we said that the year before. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this year is not different, right? So it could be a situation to where we're going to have the head coach and the GM and the quarterback who are all new, and the offensive coordinator who are all new, first time in forever that that's happened to an organization. And you are going to have those sort of vibes, and hopefully those vibes do turn into wins. But it is different. Sorry if we've been saying that every single year, and hopefully it turns into wins. But it's hard to explain. Yes, it is different. Yes, in Richmond it was different. Yes, last year with Bieniemy it was different. Those turned into poop shows. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but that doesn't mean that this year is not different than it has been in past years. It is a high energy, fast paced practices with good physicality, with great coaching. That part is definitely way different. The coaching is a whole lot different, and hopefully it turns into more dubs.
I really do hope so. I do feel so. I was going to say this year felt different, but then when I started saying it, that's when I was remembering that I actually have said that, and to recent years,
Absolutely.
and since we've been doing Ref the District even, and so I will say that this year, and I was a big Sam Howell believer, okay, in the beginning of the season. But this time things feel different, I think, because Jayden Daniels has been looking the part and has been relaxed, and one of them is making one of my requests true, which is that I needed him to be heads and shoulders above the rest.
Right.
And he has been, and he's looked good, and he is winning people over in a way that is genuine. Not, I have to say this, or how Sam Howell was getting talked about in national media even last year, where people had a lot of faith in him as a young guy who could learn and could sling it and all this other stuff. Jayden Daniels is the hype is getting real, and Gus is a little concerned about that. The expectations are a little high. I'm don't have that comment here, but I did have Yams. I've seen good and bad about all the top QB prospects, just like leading up to the draft. It depends on how it's being presented and what your personal bias may be. I mean, we've talked a little bit about New England, and Drake May struggled. JJ McCarthy's had struggles in Minnesota. I haven't heard anything out of Atlanta as far as their QB situation is concerned beyond Cousins. But everything, and Caleb Williams seems to be doing great, by the way, but that, that was expected. I haven't heard any negatives really about Jayden Daniels. Is the hype too much right now for the young QB?
Yeah, that's funny, because I heard one of the producers on 106.7 jump in there and say he thinks maybe there's some sort of grand conspiracy that everybody is trying to push this. Jayden Daniels has been perfect throughout camp and only putting out positive information, positive videos, and all of that. And he says it just seems like there's too much of that going on. But you do hear from some folks. I'll give you one example. It was Scott Pioli, right? Who used to be the GM of the Patriots, GM of the Chiefs. He was at camp early last week, or late last week, early in training camp, and he watched Jayden Daniels for 2 practices, and he said, "Look, Jayden Daniels hasn't been great, but Jayden Daniels hasn't been bad. He's been good, and the things that he's doing out there are all the things that you expect a rookie quarterback to do, and then some. He has his issues at times." But what he doesn't have issues on are the things that always concern you about rookie or young quarterbacks. He doesn't have an issue with his footwork. His footwork is excellent, according to all reports, including Scott Pioli. By the way, again, that's a respected 2-time GM of Super Bowl teams. He doesn't have bad accuracy issues. He's
Yeah,
not
his
throwing it
mechanics,
into
his
the
arm
dirt.
mechanics are equally as strong.
Exactly. Remember, we heard the reports with Carson Wentz and throwing it in the dirt. We're hearing the reports on Marcus Mariota throwing it in the dirt. Okay, so you're not hearing that from Jayden Daniels. So he has some accuracy issues in camp, but nothing that is concerning. Every quarterback has some accuracy issues. You don't have arm strength issues a la Taylor Heineke, right? Remember the second year he came in as the starter, and it was all about, oh, he just looks stronger throwing the ball this year. And it turned out that, of course, was not true. He doesn't have trouble picking up the playbook. He hasn't had that sort of issue a la, Dwayne Haskins when he was expected to be the starter. So all of those things that you are worried about with a quarterback, you haven't had that yet in training camp with Jayden Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's super encouraging, but he also hasn't seen live bullets yet, right? He's had rushes, but the guys aren't hitting him. They go around him if they get to him, but he's getting the ball out quick.
Mm-hmm.
He understands the offense completely. He's building rapport with all of his receivers and running backs and figuring those things out. His accuracy in terms of finding guys when he should is there. His timing has been great. All of that. So all of that stuff that you are concerned about with some of these guys has not been a concern with Jayden Daniels. And so we want to temper our expectations a little bit, but you have to look at it and say he hasn't had any of the problems that young quarterbacks normally have. And that's great. That's not necessarily going to translate into having a great season, but at least we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about the beat reporter saying he's throwing it into the ground a lot. He looks confused out there. His mechanics aren't great. His footwork is off. He doesn't have the strong enough arm to make the big plays. Receivers aren't having to stop and wait for the ball. Things like that. You're not seeing or hearing any of that. And that's a positive. And hopefully it translates.
Yeah, I agree with Locked On Law here. All we want is a legitimate starting QB.
Yeah.
I think that he doesn't need to be. Jayden Daniels doesn't necessarily need to be the savior, or as Gus had said, if he doesn't have a CJ Stroud-like season, that people are going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
I need to see just competent QB play consistently. And
Right.
I put some really low early numbers as far as what to expect from him during the season. I might pump those numbers up a little bit, but it is going to be good to be reserved. And like you said, wait until we see something. I think that the joint practices are going to be so critical.
Absolutely.
To his development, and that we never have to see Marcus Mariota take a snap in a live game action during the regular season would be fantastic. I had mentioned something a couple weeks ago when Marcus Mariota had come up. I mentioned I'd created a logo for my Atlanta Falcon fan, and I just wanted to share that today because I did happen to find it. But you'll remember Marcus Mariota a few years back ago threw the football from his backside.
Yeah.
And so I created the Atlanta logo and replaced the bird with Marcus Mariota silhouetted throwing from his backside. And I hope we never have to see this, Stoner.
Yeah.
I hope to never have to replace that ATL with the W.
Yeah.
Like I don't want that to be the case for Washington. And
that's a great logo there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard a lot on Mariota is he just hasn't been great in practice. He's doing competent quarterback play most of the time, but he has had, Marcus Mariota type plays where he can't throw the ball to the running back on a swing pass. He can't get it to the tight end across the middle. That's why he's a backup quarterback on his fifth team, whatever it may be, after only about 7 or 8 years in the league. That's who he is. You're right. You don't ever want to see him. So we just need Jayden to be able to play and be. It really does. You can look at numbers. You can look at box scores. You can look at ratings and all this. But it always just kind of comes down to that eye test. And if you look at him and you say that's a competent quarterback, then you can build on that. And so hopefully that's what Jayden is.
Yeah. Deluxe, the team is protecting him as much as possible from the savior label by design. Tommy T here. Jayden has said he is just a rookie, not a savior. Absolutely. I think that it is going to be good and we will be exciting and the stands will be filled. Maybe even those $15,000 bar seats to high five the team as they come in from the locker room will also be filled if we start winning some games due to some quarterback play. But he's not having to do this alone. There are 11 other guys on defense and 10 other guys on the offense when he's out there, and we're hearing some good things from both sides of the ball. Terry McLaurin, as expected,
Terry McLaurin,
fantastic. He's Terry McLaurin. The rest of the wide receiver group, we're going to get to them in a little bit because they have had some changes today, and things might not be as good there. The running back room looks to be pretty good. Not great, but they're excited about, the coaches are excited about B-Rob. And of course, Eckler is looking to impact in ways that he can impact. The tight ends, Zach Ertz, is looking like the younger Zach Ertz. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of yards after the catch, but we're going to expect a lot of catches from him, I think, this season. So good things from there. The offensive line, we've seen a lot of shuffling around.
Yeah. Interesting.
And there's only two positions that seem to be solidified: center and right guard.
Yeah.
And the other three positions, Stoner, are up in the air. That being said, some really good things being said about Brandon Coleman.
Yeah, it is a little bit exciting what we're hearing about Brandon Coleman. Now I've heard some tough things about him as well, that he does have a tendency to kind of get pushed around a little bit, but I mean, he is a rookie. He is one of those guys you can say, look, he's a rookie trying to make his mark at left tackle or right tackle even. But I thought what was really interesting is when they went in on their first 11-on-11 in pads, that this was your line. This was your offensive line, left to right. Coleman, right, at left tackle. Allegretti at left guard. Biadish at center, Cosme at right guard, and Wiley at right tackle. That was your line. That's basically when you do your first 11-on-11 in camp with pads, those guys who are out there first are basically your starters at this point. It can totally change, but I fully expect that's probably how it's going to turn out on the offensive line. I'm good. That's kind of what I expect it to be. That's what the line is going to be. Line's going to struggle a little bit. Sorry, it's going to struggle a little bit on the edges for sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the occasional blown block and stuff like that. That's going to be frustrating. I think what's important to remember as far as the line is concerned is they're not necessarily going to be dropping back in pass protection 55 times a game.
That's right. 55 times in a row.
Yeah.
In a game.
Yeah. So it's going to look different. And I think that I foresee the line improving, and I know there's legit concerns over the offensive line coach who's never really had a successful season in the NFL as far as the line's concerned. But I think I'm less concerned about him, and I'm more putting the onus on a Cliff Kingsbury, Anthony Lynn, Brian Johnson offense that's going to be designed to help Jayden Daniels get the ball out before pressure gets to him, and or use the running game to let the guys be maulers. That's what Sam Cosme was asking for, who again looks fantastic. Sam Cosme does, but they want to be run blocking. They want to be, pushing people around, not be on the back foot. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that. So I think that rounds out our offensive side of the ball.
Real quick, one last thing on that offensive line is that yes, you are going to have those coaches who are going to help kind of coach in order to not get the quarterback killed and run the ball more. But there are going to be times that Jayden Daniels is going to be back there and somebody's going to beat one of those edge guys and he's going to get crushed. And that's going to happen. It's just the consistency of it. Can't have it happen too often. Mm-hmm. And you have to do everything you can to protect that quarterback in terms of play action, in terms of running the ball more, in terms of getting the ball out quickly, all of those things. But there are still times where he's going to have a 5-step drop and he's first receiver is not going to be open and he's going to be looking and he's going to get crushed. And that consistency of that happening not too often, that's what we're looking for. And hopefully they can overcome some of those offensive line issues.
Yeah, because I do think that was a big reason for Sam Howell's demise last season is the amount of times he was getting shellacked. Like it just takes a toll on you. The David Carr effect, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's just you get hit and you don't want to get hit again, and so you're speeding things up, but you're not there yet mentally. And so then you start making more mistakes or you are hesitant to make those mistakes. So you hold on the ball and then you get taken down again. And it just piles on and on and on. And we don't want to see, and this was my main concern drafting Jayden Daniels, was that pressure to sack ratio. And if he starts getting hit early, is he going to turn to his legs earlier to avoid that? It's fine if he keeps making 10-yard scrambles, and because yards are yards, get the first down however you get the first down. Try to avoid those big hits, but get the first down. But if he is consistently scrambling out of the pocket 2-3 yard gains at a time and not looking down the field because he's constantly under pressure or feels he's constantly under pressure, that could be bad.
Yeah,
that could be bad.
Yeah, and offensively overall, just kind of sum up everything that my opinion on what the offense has been doing so far in camp. Look, on Tuesday's practice, everything, the offense was just killing it. And that was their second 11-on-11 practice in pads, and the offense was absolutely killing it. So I think some of those guys that you talked about that stood out, Zach Ertz has stood out. Austin Eckler is not coming off a major knee injury, right? He's not coming off of he had a high ankle sprain. So he should look good like he does. And it's exciting to be able to have him back there. So I'm excited. I think the offense is going to be much improved for so many reasons that we've already talked about. Coaching, the different players.
And also they were just awful last year.
Yeah,
so it's really hard not to improve with how bad they were last year.
Jahan's drops were just perplexing, and Logan couldn't stay healthy, and just everything that was going on, especially with the offensive line, and then Sam getting sacked and then throwing all the interceptions later on. It just went downhill. They can't help but be better this upcoming season.
Yeah, this is I'm expecting some good things from them, and I don't think they need to do it alone because this defense is starting to shape up to be the defense we thought we had.
I'm excited
under Ron Rivera for the last few years, where they were hot and cold. Sometimes they looked like a top 5 unit, and the other times they looked really, really bad.
Yeah.
Well, the interior defensive linemen are coming right back and looking to be a force. Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen just being their disruptive selves. Jonathan Allen, man, looking like a whole fresh new guy after 7+ years of losing. He seems reinvigorated, but they're not alone. Johnny Newton, the rookie, all cleared. As soon as they hit pads to do full contact, he is not seeing first team reps. I don't even think he's seeing second team reps. I think he's seeing third team reps. But his energy is there, and by all reports, he seems to look every bit of a high second round pick that he was.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna be the type of guy that we're going to talk a lot about this season. The biggest problem I think with the defensive line last year, maybe the last couple of years, was twofold. One, the guys were playing too many snaps. Allen and Payne were playing way too many snaps for a defensive tackle. And especially as the year goes on, that just wears on you, right? Two, there were never any stunts. There were never any sort of tricks or games that they were. It was every time just go forward. And that becomes easy to coach against when you're the opposing offense. So I thought that was an issue with this team the last couple of years. So this year we're hearing there's a lot of stunting going on. There's a lot of communication going on up front with those guys. And yeah, Johnny Newton, Jonathan Allen, and Daron Payne have really stood out so far in camp. It's only been a week, but so far so good.
Yeah, just to answer JG's question there. Yeah, so we're listing some of them off. Maybe not, highlighting too much, but Jayden Daniels was our first standout. Terry McLaurin was given a nod as a standout, but we expected that, sort of like Jonathan Allen, although a lot of people were down on him after that season. But the interior defensive lineman, Brandon Coleman, has done good things and has been standing out and looking like he's going to be day one starter out at left tackle if things continue. So there's another standout for you. On the defensive side, the edge rushers haven't been impressing, so I'm not going to give any standouts there. In fact, we have one in particular who's been looking rather bad out there at defensive end. And Real Deal Willie Will here is asking, do you all think that Jamin Davis is performing to expectations at defensive end? And Stoner doesn't sound like that's happening.
No, he's not. Let's remember, he's 235 pounds. Do you want 235 pounds playing on the edge? Not usually, right? So he's a little bit small as an edge guy. But also, he's never played that position. And so he doesn't have the understanding of how to win at that position. He doesn't have the ability to use his hands. He doesn't have the sort of moves to get around guys or the bend that a lot of these great edge rushers.
I was about to say, I think that's the biggest thing, right? When you're talking about an edge rusher, the elite edge rushers, because Brian Burns is 240 pounds, as Locked On Law mentions, elite edge rushers have the bend to them.
Yeah.
Jamin Davis has been a linebacker for years. He plays upright. Yeah. He might not have the bend. That might be one of the reasons why he's been out as a linebacker and not there.
Here's the problem with Jamin Davis in terms of whether or not he's going to have an impact on this team is, he's from a different regime. He's from the Ron Rivera. This organization right now, this leadership, has no equity in him. They have they have not invested anything in Jamin Davis. He's got this is his last year on contract. They're not going to have to eat a bunch of money if he gets cut this year or at the end of the year, whichever. So he's not standing out on the edge. It's a numbers game in the linebacker room, right?
We've got some standouts in the linebacker room.
You've got standouts there, and none of them are named Jamin Davis. Unfortunately, it's not looking good. I was kind of hoping that he could make that transition to edge. Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, Nathan. Unfortunately, I kind of see him on the outside looking in for this roster. That's just kind of how it happens, right?
You have to, you got to think that, unfortunately we start hearing from people like Craig Hoffman that, maybe he needs to start shining on special teams.
He's never played special teams
to kind of get a roster spot here, because it's just like, this is an athletic guy who's improved at linebacker the last, 3 years that he's played here in Washington. Now, maybe the scheme changes too much and everything, what they want, but it's baffling to me that we couldn't find use for a guy like that when, last year we were having to see Miracle Whip out there. So it's just kind of like, come on, we know Jamin Davis can play football. Surely it would matter. But when you look at the linebacker room, they've got guys they've really like, and two of them are standing out. Luvu, the signing, has just been an absolute monster for Washington. He's soaking up everything from Bobby Wagner, who I'm not giving a standout grade to.
Right.
But Luvu's been fantastic. And the other one, Stoner, I'll give you two of them to talk about, is the rookie Jordan McGee.
Was he a
has been
fifth rounder?
Just the sixth
I don't
rounder.
remember. Sixth
who the coaches are raving about, who the beat reporters are talking about, looking good out there, looking like a natural fit, playing faster than I think most people expected him to be. What do you make about the two standout linebackers Washington has this early in camp?
Yeah, Frankie Louvu has definitely been impressive. I think one of the beat reporters, Nikki J from the Washington Post, said one thing that she's noticed just in overall in the first week is Frankie Louvu is fast AF, right? He's a fast dude. It looks like he's going to be everything that they hoped that he would be when they signed him in this offseason. He's one of the few guys that this team signed to a long-term deal. I mean, it's not a huge long, like 3 years, but they only signed a couple of guys to longer-term contracts. Him and Armstrong and Biadish, right? So those are the three guys that they gave at least 3-year contracts to. So it looks like it's going to be a good signing as long as he stays healthy, because look, that's been a problem here in Washington for a long time, especially the last 4 years. So if you get competent linebacker play, that helps the defensive line. And if the defensive line is already doing their job, then it's going to make the linebackers' job easier. It's going to make the safety's job easier all the way down the board. And guess what? All of that is going to make the quarterback's job easier as well. So good linebacker play is key to we like to kind of poo-poo linebacker play nowadays, but you still need it. It may not be as valued as
it could be the difference between a 3-yard run and a 7-yard run.
Absolutely. So I love what Louvu's doing. And Jordan McGee, who, again, sixth rounder, right, this year. Impressive reports that he's been playing extremely well in camp. He's not even going to be a starter, but he might get some playing time. That I think they're going to basically run a 4-2-5. Right, the old Buffalo nickel, if you will, right? They're gonna, and so you're only gonna have two linebackers, and that's Louvu and Wagner. And Wagner never comes out, and Louvu never comes out. So when's Jordan McGee gonna play? And that also, by the way, kind of hints at what Jamin Davis is looking at. If he wants to still be a linebacker, there's no room for him because he doesn't play special teams. I mean, Antonio Pittman's probably Antonio Pittman, Michael Pittman. I forget. The guy they got from Detroit, the other linebacker, who's a standout special teams guy, right? He's going to make the team over Jamin Davis because he plays special teams. So that's 4 linebackers right there. And we can talk about the DNs, right? You've got Fowler and Farrell and Armstrong and Henry and Andre Jones Jr. I'm just saying.
Those last two, I'm not sure about, but yeah.
Right. And you got, who knows when F.A. Obata's coming off the IR. So it's
and you have guys in the interior who can push out there too, right? Like I think we're gonna see this defensive line kind of really work and do matchups and stuff. And Anthony Pittman, Grimjaw is giving you the name there. But yeah, we're gonna see some good things on the line, and then the linebacker core. McGee might be kind of working himself up into more of a, you said not a starter, but possibly that first one off the bench as far as his play is concerned. So, which is exciting and disappointing in a lot of ways that your 6th rounder is going to be beating out your 1st round pick.
Oh, yeah.
But
also he holds that investment that he was drafted by this regime.
This regime, yeah.
They don't have any sort of investment in Jamin Davis. None. If he doesn't make the team, it doesn't make them look bad, right? Especially if Jordan McGee does make the team, and they can say, look, we can pick a 6th round linebacker better than the previous regime was able to pick a 1st round linebacker. So it's looking good so far for Jordan McGee, Frankie Louvu, and Bobby Wagner's Bobby Wagner. That we kind of overlook him. It's almost like Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's Terry McLaurin. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get excellence every time. You're going to get the right attitude. leadership, all of that, and he brings that. It's just we can't really talk about it too much because that's what he always does, and it's just always going to be there.
Yeah, he's going to be solid. He's a little slow in his advanced age.
Sure.
But it is going to be there. So Grimjaw saying, I heard Jordan McGee is getting starter reps with Luvu and Bobby.
Yeah, if they do a 4-3, then I could totally see Jordan McGee in there.
Like I said, he's absolutely going to be one of the first ones off the bench here. Code Talker, Jamin Davis seems to be the great athlete with little play reading ability. He would probably excel in a role that doesn't require reading and reacting.
What's that? What position is that?
Kind of want to know what position that is as well, but I will say this in his defense. Okay. He is not a middle linebacker. That experiment lasted 1 year and it was awful. Trying to force him from 1 year in Kentucky to being a middle linebacker, not going to happen. Okay. That being said, I think that what Code Talker is getting at is his instincts might not be the strongest.
Yeah.
Because I will say this, the guy has speed, and when he makes a decision, he flies.
Sure.
And we've seen that. And so I think maybe the reading and reacting, I don't think is necessarily his issue as much as it's his instincts, because when he sees something and he makes that decision, he's quick about it.
Yeah.
But it's being a linebacker of Luvu or Bobby Wagner where instinctually they're finding themselves where they need to be to make plays before things happen. That's maybe the level of reading he doesn't have, right? He's instinctually not there. It has to happen, and then when he sees it happen, then he goes for it.
Sure.
And again, a heck of an athlete. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, can't deny that his physical abilities are there. It just hasn't clicked. This is year 4. If it hasn't clicked in year 4, it's not going to click. He's not going to go this year if he gets cut or next year or whatever and just all of a sudden be this great player. I mean, I kind of equate it to Ryan Anderson, right? Ryan Anderson had incredible physical ability. For whatever reason, it didn't click. And everyone was like, well, maybe he just needs a fresh start with a new team. That's usually after 4 years, that's usually who you are.
Yeah, I think he was just too slow. He was strong and he had football IQ, but he was much like some of the other linebackers we had trotted out over the last few years, and just being, John Bostic, just too slow, right? John Bostic still had the football knowledge, and he could see the play develop and he could make the moves. Unfortunately, those moves were a half step behind his prime days, which is enough to get burned in the NFL these days.
Thomas Davis.
Thomas Davis was another one.
Same thing. And even, and it's not necessarily that he was better in his prime days, but I mean, David Mayo is the same thing, right? A very intelligent linebacker, but just didn't have the physical ability to make the plays that he needed to. He knew where he needed to be. He knew that he needed to get somewhere. He just couldn't get there because he just didn't have the physical ability. Same with Thomas Davis and John Bostic.
Yeah, it reminds me of a safety we have that we all love, and that's Jeremy Reeves. Great on special teams, but when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, he is just too slow compared to some of his counterparts. Namely, one of our other standouts that I'll name here, which also comes from Carolina, and Jeremy Chin as a tone setter is one of the ways that he's been described this offseason. And he's on a 1-year prove it deal, and he looks like he wants to get paid bigly.
That's right. Bigly. Yeah. I mean, he stood out on that back end, which is great to see. We've had some spotty safety play over the last few years, so hopefully he can shore that up. I have heard really good reports about what he's doing back there, and I think it's going to be Chin and Quan Martin as your 2 starting safeties, which there's no room for Derek Forrest. There's no room for Percy Butler.
Yeah. Butler one I think is less surprising for people than Defoe, who has a lot of people in his corner thinking that he is fantastic. But Derek Forrest was out there with the 3s for a good portion of this training camp, which is a bit surprising as he has a lot of playmaking ability. We saw that his first full year as a starter. He has not been able to stay healthy. And I'll say this, he didn't do himself any favors last year when he was healthy. He did not look the kind of what they were looking for. I will say this about Quan Martin, not on my standouts list.
Okay.
They continue to try to move him around and see where he can excel. Joe Witt Jr. talked about how, he just does so many things well that you're just trying to see where they should put him and test him in certain ways. Now, I'll say this. I didn't like that last year under Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera. I hated it. He was a rookie, and they were just putting him out there, and he was getting burned. He looked awful because they had him trying to do 4 or 5 things.
Right.
And it wasn't until later in the season where they started kind of having him do one thing, and he started excelling at that. Now, maybe here in year 2, he can take on that bigger role, which is a role that he had in Illinois, which was playing multiple positions on the back end, which would be fantastic. But I'm expecting big things from Quan Martin. And if they just keep toying around with him, I'm a little worried that's not going to come to fruition. Now, I'm very happy that what's not going to come to fruition, it looks like, is CB5 Emmanuel Forbes, who right now is a standout this early in training camp. Had a bad mini camp, looked like he was falling down the depth chart, but over the last week, Stoner, he's been impressing enough that people have to keep coming back to talk about just how good Emmanuel Forbes has been looking. Now, he's not been perfect, and he's been talked about in a way that he's been step for step with Terry, and sometimes he gets burned and sometimes he just makes plays, and it seems like he's starting to put things together, not just putting those cheeseburgers and getting 17 pounds bigger.
Where would you say then, if you say he's not CB5 now at this point, how far would you move him up? And you have to include Sandra still.
Yeah, Sandestroll is a standout. I think there's a lot of love coming for Sandestroll. It's going to be interesting to see where him and Benjamin St. Juice kind of fall. I still think Davis is going to be cornerback 1. I think he's going to be a lock for the outside. Who they use on the other outside, a lot of people think Benjamin St. Just is better on the inside, but Sandestroll's the inside guy. So maybe that's your odd man out, and Emmanuel Forbes is there. Maybe it's the difference between if they're running a man package, who I'd probably trust Benjamin St. Just a little bit more, or if they're running a zone where I think that Emmanuel Forbes excels better at being 10 yards back, reading, and able to use his playmaking ability. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, Joe Witt Jr. did talk about how don't talk about the 11 starters. We're going to go 18, 19 players deep, and it'll be interesting to see how they kind of, move around there.
Yeah. Sanders still has been really good. He's one of those guys. I don't want to put him at this level, right? But he's one of those guys like Terry and like Bobby Wagner. You're going to get excellence from him every time out. He's going to know where to be. He's going to be there. He has a complete understanding of the defense. But they're just not talking about him because, okay, he's that guy over there, and we don't even have to deal with it because we know he's going to make the plays. And so I think he's going to go through this season, and it's going to be one of those things you're going to look at the box score, and you're going to say, Sanders still had 1.5 tackles today. He didn't show up. And then you're going to go watch the tape, and you're going to say, oh, well, that's because he had the slot locked down the entire game. And nobody could beat him across the middle or whatever. And then you're going to say, oh, and then you're going to look at his PFF. Okay, don't kill me for saying PFF, but you're going to look at PFF and you're going to say, he's going to have this huge grade because they're going to look at the tape and they're going to see how well he plays. I think he's going to be that kind of guy this year. He's not going to have the big numbers. He's not going to have like 6 picks, right? And he's not going to have all these tackles and like 5 sacks from blitz. And he's not going to do all that. he's going to be really quiet throughout the game, and then you're going to look at the tape and you're going to go, man, he dominated his dude today.
Yeah. So
keep that in mind too.
Yeah, Code Talker here. Forbes should have consulted Darrell Green. I won't have to read the rest of it because it doesn't deal with Washington players. But that part there, Forbes should have consulted Darrell Green. You know who did? Sanistraw.
That's right.
And you know how good he looked with Darrell Green, and also how good Darrell Green looked. Darrell Green looks like he could throw on a uniform and still play.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that there's a lot of excitement, I think, for Mike Sanistraw. And I think that, again, this defense has it on paper right now looks like it's going to be vastly improved. I think we've made some strides on offense. We made the biggest stride at the QB position, but this defense, the standouts right now seem to be coming from there. And there's a lot of excitement in that regard. And Grimjaw mentioning Mike Davis and Castro Fields, opening eyes too. I mentioned Davis. I've already got him locked as CB1.
Yeah.
And Castro Fields, I think, is fine. I don't think his eye opening is going to be as I think he makes the team probably. I think the team might like him. But I wouldn't get excited about Castro Fields beating out BSJ or Forbes. I don't think it's going to get that far.
I'm not as high as you are on those guys. And I'll say this as of July 31st, 2024, their first pick in the draft next year is going to be a cornerback.
Sure.
That's who their first pick is, because I don't think their outside guys are good enough in this league. I don't think BSJ, Forbes, Davis, Castro Fields, who's the guy? Christian Holmes.
You got the undrafted free agent.
Yeah.
Name Butcher.
Well, yeah. Or the other guy that they brought in at the end of the year. He has a funny name like Dre Buyu. I forget.
Yeah. Yes. I know who you're talking about. So here's, I agree with you, Stoner. I'm not saying that these guys are going to be great.
Right. They're going to be vastly improved.
They're going to be good. Yeah. And yes, that's a weak position still. And it's also, when you're talking about years of signing, I think Davis is on a 1-year deal. He's one of these ones that's on a short leash as far as that's concerned. So yeah, I agree with you, but I think that they'll see some improvement here. Now, we had a few things regarding with some of the deals here. So first off, Roger, I don't believe Forbes gained 17 pounds. It's preposterous. 7 pounds, maybe. I am quoting the man himself.
That's right.
It was reported that it was 15 pounds. He was asked about it by the reporters, and he said, well, first, I want to correct you. It was 17 pounds.
Right.
I had a little fun with it. So I was having a little fun with it. Thanks, Roger, for joining us tonight. Real deal here is Byron Pringle. Let's get back to the wide receivers, Stoner, who signed today. Trade bait or someone getting the boot? Someone did get the boot. 2 wide receivers got the boot. Dax Milne, Mr. Steal Your Goal, was sent the pink papers and out the door. And then surprising to me was Bird was the other one listed there, because it seemed like a lot of people were pretty high on Bird. What do you make of this Byron Pringle re-signing as he was with the team last year?
Yeah, that was a very interesting one. Not the position group that was signed, but that it was a guy who was a free agent and comes from the previous regime, right? I mean, Byron Pringle was signed by Ron Rivera and them last year. So that part is kind of surprising, but I like Byron Pringle. I think he's a heck of a receiver, and he does a lot of things really well. And so to bring him back, I'm wondering if it's an indictment on the wide receiver room as a whole, that they needed to go get a guy, not just a guy, but go get a guy who can produce. So where does he fit into this? I don't think he's trade bait. I think he's somebody that they're going to count on to be that wide receiver 6 or wide receiver 7, depending on how deep they go, but somebody you can rely on when somebody up front gets hurt. But does that mean, was that a bad sign for De'Ami Brown? That's kind of my question, because look, we know The first three are going to make it, obviously, with McLaurin, Dotson, and McCaffrey. He's a draft pick. Whether you think he's going to be wide receiver 3 or not, he's a draft pick. They're keeping him. You got Jamison Crowder as 4. You signed Zacchaeus a while back. He's 5. Now you're getting into that. Where's Diami? 6, and then Pringle 7. Are they keeping 7 wide receivers?
Yeah, when you hear good things coming from Tremaine, who's been looking really good, and some of the younger guys, Tinsley, have been making some catches.
Allen. I'm just terrible with names. The little kid from UCLA who had a good camp last year.
Allen.
Kaz Allen. What did I call him? Zach Allen? Kaz Allen, right? So that's a numbers game back there. But so when you bring in a proven guy like Pringle, who is Tommy T's saying, also for kick returns, because they're trying everybody on kick returns.
Yeah.
Right? They got 6, 7, 8 guys back there on kick and punt returns. So it is interesting that they're bringing in a proven guy in the wide receiver room. Not a guy who's going to try and, fight for a practice squad or something. This is a guy who immediately jumps right into the mix for a roster spot. And I didn't know if that was an indictment on Diami or if that was an indictment on the back end, the Tinsleys and Allens. Those guys aren't performing. Obviously, they got rid of Bird and Dax Milne. So that's
already got rid of some of those into the roster guys. And the real deal is saying that that's what his whole point was, is Diami gone. Is he getting the boot? I don't think it speaks great to him, which is
it doesn't.
It was interesting because just a couple days ago, it was sounding like Diami Brown was having a pretty good camp, and the coaches kind of called him out specifically of saying that, hey, he's doing some good things, to then turn around, sign competition for him where we really don't know what's going on. And Allison, I do agree with this. Allison saying the Commanders wide receiver depth is mid at best.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go mid. I mean, really, you have Terry McLaurin, who's a top 100 guy, NFL top 100 guy. And then there's a cliff to where we get to Jahan Dotson, who has not been the star that we thought he was going to be.
Yeah. And remember last year in camp, he was catching everything. Everything. And even in preseason, catching everything. And then it got to the season, and all of a sudden he had the dropsies. I couldn't figure it out. And so then you come into this year, and it seems like he's still got the dropsies. He's dropped a lot of balls in camp. So I'm concerned about that because he has never had that reputation. So, yeah, the wide receiver room is definitely mid at best, and they're going to need help there. And hopefully my man, Luke McCaffrey, provides some of that help.
Could be there. Yeah. So Adam here had mentioned, another Adam had some BS. Adam Ranks asking about Adam Ranks' wide receiver ranking, where Terry is worse than George Pickens. I had not seen this.
I hadn't seen that either.
Thanks for pointing it out. I'll have to take a look. I will say Adam Rank is fantastic at what he does, and what he does, his job is to get people talking about his stuff.
Yeah.
He does it every year. He's already given, I think, Washington like 5 wins, which we've laughed at year after year. He only got close once, and that was this abysmal last season. But I would take whatever Adam Rank says with a grain of salt if it's doing something like this. He has some good analysis that he can put out, but this particular one is rough. I would not put Terry McLaurin above or below George Pickens, and it didn't seem like that's the case. The NFL would either, as they had him, Terry McLaurin, in the top 100, and George Pickens didn't sniff it. So
didn't even sniff it.
Sniff it.
I've always said about Terry McLaurin, he's ranked somewhere in the 12 to 15 range, but he's still wide receiver 1 in Washington, and he's still a heck of a player and a heck of a leader. And you need guys like Terry McLaurin on your team.
Yep. So Matt Rowell noticing that I am looking thinner. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I have lost 20 pounds over the last couple of months. Trying to trim down 10 more. eating smarter, and actually being able to work out. So when, getting back surgery and being able to walk again, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
I've always told people, for when it comes to sort of weight loss, that I have the guaranteed method. It's guaranteed. It will always work for everybody. If you follow this method, eat less, work out more. I guarantee you it's going to work.
No, there really isn't any magic formula outside of that. You gotta burn off more than you take in. That's very, very simple. Very, very simple there. So not so simple is this one here.
Nice one.
From Tommy T, giving us a conundrum, a bit of a puzzle, Stoner. If the last roster spot comes down to Jamin Davis and Phil Mathis, Big Phil, as Tommy T calls him, who gets the spot?
Wow, that's a tough one, because when you look at the position groups, when you have the defensive tackles, right, you have 4 pretty solid defensive tackles. Now, when you look at the linebacker room, you've got 4 pretty solid linebackers in front of them. So I don't know. Who would you give it to? Neither one of them play special teams. They're both high draft picks. Boot them both. I'm sorry, I'm cheating. I say boot them both.
Going for the neither
and re-sign Dax Milne. How's that?
Oh wow. Okay, that might be a little much. I'm gonna go with Mr. D-Man here, Jamin Davis.
Wait, he's the odd man out, or he's the
keep. Okay. To me, that's my take. D-Man, you're gonna have to tell me whether or not I actually agree with you. Real Deal agrees with it, but Mike Lee says the opposite. Get rid of Davis. Mathis has not done anything at all. Well, not a bit, not one bit. Right. Okay. Jamin Davis, at least, again, like I said, improved each year and showed that he can play football at a high level.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, that's true. And by the way, speaking of people who haven't done anything, is Jayden Daniels still on the team? Seriously, I'm not doing a bit.
He is. Yeah.
I mean, is he out there practicing? Is he
that part? I don't know. I don't know if he's healthy enough to. He's not been released by the team. At least I have not seen that one there.
I bet you if we did a poll right now, an instant poll, and you couldn't look it up, if I said who is Jayden Daniels, even all the people who are here wouldn't know. I mean, not all of them, but the majority.
Their fair share. Well, I do know that they need to make sure that they're hitting that like button for us if they haven't already. We do appreciate everybody jumping in live and giving us some of these fun scenarios here, like Tommy T did. And if you have one that we can get to within the confines of the conversation, we absolutely will. The conversation is talking about training camp, and more specifically, the Standouts, Stoner. And Brian telling us, don't sleep on these people. Of course, you don't have to sleep either by going out to don'tsleepenergy.com using the code DISTRICT to get 10% off your entire order. You'll get to support a local DMV business. So chuck out all that other stuff that does not give you wings and use Don't Sleep Energy for all of your energy needs. They have energy shots, they have sugar-free and sugar options for you, and they have some fantastic gear with logos that I think look absolutely sharp. And I didn't create it, so it's not like I'm patting myself on the back for that one. But Don't Sleep Energy, use the code DISTRICT to get yourself 10% off. Don't Sleep Energy makes you great. And Brian telling us, don't sleep on the coaching staff, as they're the biggest standout so far. They have impressed. What are your thoughts on the coaching staff, Stoner, as far as we went through positions and we didn't even get to kicker yet, which we can get to. But Brian saying that the coaching staff is the biggest standout so far.
Well, I think when you looked at the past 4 years, and look, that's what we have to go by because this is a brand new regime, and compare it to what we had the last 4 years and what's going on out there on the field, it is almost night and day because of the energy. And that's part of the reason why coaching staffs don't really last that long in most sports, because you just sort of get into this sort of grind over years and years of being in the same place, and you kind of lose that energy. So there is something about bringing in a whole new coaching staff and having that high energy, but you also have to have those coaches who continue to have that high energy every day. Guys like Daryl Tapp, who has been a difference maker out there, and Joe Witt Jr., who is out there coaching all the time. Dan Quinn is high energy. So all of that has been very impressive so far in terms of the overall what's the word? The culture within the organization has been a big change, but we're gonna find out if it's gonna mean anything when we get down to the regular season and start doing this for real. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have all of that, and everything can be great in training camp and all of that, and the energy and the coaching staff has been great and all that. And then you get on the field and you're still putting out Emmanuel Forbes at cornerback, and you're still, safeties are still getting beat, and running backs are still dropping the ball, turning the ball over and all that. And coaches can't do a whole lot about that.
Yeah. I like the excitement. We were there last year with Eric Bieniemy. And praising the hard-nosed type coaching that he was bringing. I will say this about this coaching staff.
All right.
They are speaking my language and have been since the beginning, not just the rah stuff, because the rah stuff will get very old.
Yep.
You start piling up losses, and Jonathan Allen and Bobby Wagner don't want to hear your rah stuff.
That's right.
Okay. They want to hear, how the flip are we fixing this?
That's right.
But what I love and the language that they're speaking to me is that teaching language. Joe Witt Jr.'s talked a lot about it. Like, it's his job to make sure that these guys get it, right? There's talent there. His job as a coach is to unlock it. And you hear that from Dan Quinn as well, where he wants to make sure he's putting people in the position to be successful. And they're not just saying it. We're seeing them kind of move people around and testing different things. They want to make sure that they're putting out the best product, and they're working with these guys individually. And I love seeing that Joe Witt Jr. is out there working with the DBs and actually being out there and talking with them, and not just being this figurehead, right? Let DQ be the figurehead. Okay, which he's not. We've seen him go out there and do some coaching stuff. And we're seeing Cliff Kingsbury get in with his QBs left and right and talk with the offensive skill people about what he expects and why he's doing the things. And when you do that at that level, I only think good things are going to come from it. And so I'm excited about that. So I will, unlike Locked on Law, buy into the hype. Okay. Maybe not as much as someone earlier. I think Big E was on earlier and said that he's now predicting 10-7 at like the worst. Maybe not that much, but I think we're going to have a competent team, a competitive team, and an exciting team.
And you know what I've noticed about Coach Quinn as well? When he does his pressers, he's not thinking when he's talking. He's answering the question very honestly and openly and positively most of the time, right? He's just saying that, and I think that helps to not open you up for criticism, because we saw that with Ron, who always seemed to me to be trying to find the answer that he thinks people want him to say. And then he would find himself putting his foot in his mouth quite a few times in the last couple of years, especially.
Well, now he's an actual analyst. So
yeah.
Go figure that. Maybe that's why he took that job, is to get better in front of the microphone. But it's a lot different when you get to critique other people and not necessarily be critiqued yourself. And that's what we're doing here on Ref the District. And we're going to start critiquing Madden and how they rank some people. So stick with us here. The cool down coming up here on episode 183. Welcome to the cool down here on Ref the District. NFL Top 100 is done for Washington Commanders. Jonathan Allen ranked the highest out of the three. Bobby Wagner not too far behind him, 6 spots, 59 for Bobby Wagner, 53 for Jonathan Allen, and Terry McLaurin in the 90s. I think fair ratings for all of them, especially after a down season. A lot of people were surprised about Jonathan Allen still being ranked that highly. Stoner, what do you think about where he is in terms of the NFL Top 100 before we transition to these Madden ratings?
I think he's right where he's supposed to be. He's always been in that range, if I remember correctly. The last few years, he's right in that same range, right in the 55 to 60, somewhere in there.
I think he was in the 30s his near All-Pro year.
Okay, so that was 2
years ago. It was 2 years ago. Yeah. So because I think he dropped 20-ish spots this time.
Okay. Yeah. But he's right where he's supposed to. It's hard to really stand out on a bad team. And that's basically what he's been doing. So yeah, I think his rating is right where it's supposed to be. Let's not overthink these things. We overthought Jonathan Allen's role last year. Right. I mean, Trev and I talked about it last week that Trev was so mad at Jonathan Allen last year, remember, because he was always the guy leading the pregame huddle and getting everybody hype, and then they go out and give up 40, right? And Jonathan Allen's just getting pushed around. The defense is. Jonathan
Allen is getting pushed around maybe by 3 guys.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a little carried away there. But the point being that there was, it was trade Jonathan Allen. I'm tired of listening to Jonathan Allen in the pregame hype. Jonathan Allen talking, after a game where he's dropping F-bombs and criticizing everything. And so everybody want to get rid of him. Don't overthink it. Jonathan Allen is an excellent player. He's going to have his number or his name up in the field of honor, ring of honor, whatever it is at Commander Stadium. He's that type of guy. He is a good leader. He is a veteran. He is a dominant. He is strong and fast and physical and smart and all of those things. And the rest of the NFL understands that as well, and that's why he was ranked in the 50s. Think about that. Of all NFL players, he's in the top 59 of all NFL players. That's impressive.
Yep. No, he is going to be worth every penny, and I have always been a big fan of Jonathan Allen. You forgot one thing he did that made people very upset last year, which is when asked if he's thought about going somewhere else, he didn't say no. He said, yeah, I've thought about it. He answered honestly, and people were like, well, then fine, go be somewhere else. No, he is a difference maker. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in this defense, and he is ranked the highest so far for the Madden ratings for Washington players at 89 overall. And he's got a special ability that I don't know what that special. He and Chris Jones have this X that goes on their momentum shift is what it says. So the top rated players that have momentum shift ability are Chris Jones and Jonathan Allen. That's how good of a player he is. Terry McLaurin right there at 89 as well. I'm going to unfilter this to get to Deron Payne, by the way, at 83. I want to see the top 10 positions. I've got to pull that up as far as that's concerned, because there was one who surprised me. Who do you think surprised me was in the top 10 of their position ratings?
Of their position, top 10 that surprised you. Just give me one side of the ball, and then I'll
no, I can't do that.
You're not even going to give me which side of the ball it's on?
Nope.
Why? Because it's special teams? Is it?
No.
Is it Trustway? All right. So I probably would say Sam Cosmi.
It is, in fact, Sam Cosmi, ranked the 6th best
guard.
6th best guard.
6th best right guard? 6th best guard.
Best guard.
Wow.
So Zach Martin, Chris Lindstrom, Joe Tooney, Trey Smith, Quentin Nelson, Sam Cosmi.
Wow. The Commanders, the Adam Peters is going to probably get criticized at some point at the end of the year on why they didn't sign Sam Cosmi to a long-term deal earlier, because he's going to go out and have a Pro Bowl season, and then this is the last year of his contract.
Yep.
And he's going to get an S ton of money, and it's going to be way more than if they had given him a bunch of money this offseason.
Yeah. First full year playing guard. Like he is absolutely, and TJ better pay Cosmi now before he hears that. Yeah. I mean, this is outstanding. PFF has already come out and said he's one of the best guards as well. There's all these data points that are starting to show, and the agent is digging for these to make sure they're like, hey, these are getting out here.
Oh, yeah.
Key factor, Stoner, you'll notice there was a name that was not higher than Sam Cosmi.
A name. Oh, yeah. I know this one too. Brandon Sheriff.
Brandon Sheriff was not ranked above Sam Cosmi.
I'm all over your little game here this time. You usually stump me, but I got you on this one.
Yeah. So, yeah, fantastic to see them. Not all the ratings are out so far, but I thought that one was particularly good. I am looking forward to some of those more. So Jonathan Allen, by the way, ranked the 8th best defensive tackle. Ron Payne coming in as the 17th best. Of course, as a duo, that's number 1.
Oh, absolutely. As a duo. There are some good duos, but
yeah,
17.
That one's pretty good there. B-Rob, as you and I know, not in the top 10 of his position rankings there. Safeties, we don't have one in the top 10 for safeties. Top 15 wide receivers. You said Terry McLaurin should fit 12 to 15. Where does he land?
Well, I will go with 14.
15. Right at 15 with an 89 ranking. Respectable that they have there. Brandon Ayuk, everyone's favorite wide receiver this offseason, ranked at number 9 at a 91 ranking. Puka and Cup, by the way, 88 and 84 off the top 15. Very interesting there. Wow. But Keenan Allen, probably one of the more surprising ones, ranked 12th at a 90 ranking there.
Where's he at now? He's in Chicago. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, him and DJ Moore with Caleb Williams. That's going to be a tough team to stop this year.
Yeah, so some good things here. Like I said, it's interesting to see where players fit with this, because this is somebody else taking a look and kind of computing some of the things that they have, an outside perspective. Because we have people who love Brian Robinson, but he didn't end up being a top 10 there. Defoe is actually one of our top players, and he's a third stringer on this team right now. So, I mean, there's some difference there. Defoe, by the way, ranked ahead of Jeremy Chin. Andrew Wiley above Jahan Dotson. This is why you don't take the Madden rankings too seriously.
That's true. That's true.
You don't take them too seriously, but it is interesting to see where they are and where they fit.
Yeah.
And, we don't have all of them right now. Like I said, not all the positions are out there. Namely, QB isn't. And so Locked on Law had asked early on, tell him how QB number 37 isn't going to be like the last 36 since the Super Bowl, since Washington won a Super Bowl. Where does Jayden Daniels rate or should rate within Madden, and how is he different than the other 36 quarterbacks Washington's
Well, those are kind of two different questions, right? So as far as why he won't be the same as the previous 36, because the previous 36 have no impact on how he's going to perform as a quarterback. It's just like, it doesn't matter what Washington's record has been for the last 20 to 25 years. It has no effect on what the record is going to be this year. So that's kind of how I answer that one with Lockdown. But are you asking me is Jayden's Madden rating, or are you asking me why, just kind of generally why he is going to be different than the other 36?
I'm asking both. I used Madden as just like I had started that one early on. I wanted to get back to Jayden Daniels. So we're talking ratings, Madden ratings. So go ahead and give him a rating, but then answer the question for Locked On Low. Why is he going to be different?
All right. So give him a rating. Is it so? QB ratings are not out. Is that what you're
Not
telling
out
me?
yet.
I see. Okay. His QB ratings or his rating in Madden as a QB is probably going to be 82. Oh, 75 to 80 range.
TJ saying most rookies get that 75 to 80 range, and I can see that. Maybe like a 76 type deal. I think that there's going to be he might get a slight nod because of his speed. That might be a reason.
That'll help.
Old school Madden fans will remember just playing Atlanta and Michael Vick as a cheat code, and Jayden Daniels might be that as well. But it will be interesting. I do think that he's going to fall squarely in there. I'm interested in seeing where he ranks, as we've seen some Phil Simms ratings and everybody else kind of have him lower down and toning down some expectations, belying everything we're hearing from training camp. But there are some good things coming for Washington, and I'm excited for those. And we will be here through thick and thin. Stoner and I and Trev will be bringing content all the way through the rest of through into the season, and some extra content for you as well. So as we hear things coming out, we'll make sure to get a separate video for that. Your job is to make sure that you watch that separate video, make sure that you like it, share it so other people can get it as well. We stream live every Wednesday here on YouTube and Facebook at 7:30 Eastern. Be sure that you show up and join the conversation. If you can't, we're available on your favorite audio platforms afterwards, so you can listen to us there. If you do, leave us a rating and review, as it helps other people find our content. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner Ref the District, part of the Believe Network, brought to you by Bet Online and Don't Sleep Energy. And until next time.
Why is it going to be better, Locked On? Because Ref the District said so.
Be a fan.